instead of throwing everything away and then having to replace it all and not knowing with what, why don't I just concentrate on these? Why don't I just start with my why, which is what I recommend my clients do and what I do in this book too, because not only does it help keep you on track when things get hard, but also it really helps you narrow down. So I thought, what if I just concentrate on those ingredients to avoid first that just have to do with ADHD, which is what my son was having issues with or symptoms of. So when you start there, that's a really great starting place. And then I really believe that if you address what's in your kitchen, what's in your bathroom with your personal care and cleaning products, and what's with your cleaning products, that if you just concentrate on those 3 areas, you can make a big impact on your home. So just starting small in those areas. And then to help decide what can make the biggest impact in your home, I kind of developed this READ method, I call it READ. And if you follow these 4 steps, you can follow them all in the same week or day, or just a few at a time. You can make a big impact.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Eat Real to Heal podcast. I am your host, Nicolette Richer, and it is an incredible year. 2022, bye-bye 2021. 2022 is going to be different for all of us. We know so much more. We have learned so much more over the last couple of years, and now is our chance to truly do things differently. And one of the things that you can do is get started in your home, cleaning it up. One thing that COVID taught us is that there's not really a lot of media coverage out there that's been sharing that the number one thing we need to do in a pandemic, before a pandemic, at all times, is to clean up our lifestyles. This podcast is all about food, using food first to reverse chronic diseases, to heal your mind, your body, your spirit. But one of the things we like to cover on this show as well is the knowledge around cleaning up the chemicals in your home. And that's why I'm really excited to have Tonya Harris on our show. Now, Tonya Harris has a master's degree in science and holistic nutrition. She's board certified in holistic nutrition, so she knows about food. But that's not what this podcast is about. This podcast is about her knowledge in environmental toxicity. She is a specialist with certification from the Integrative Medicine Academy, and she's here to teach you how to clean up your workspace, how to clean up your home, how to clean up the places that your kids play, your bathroom, your cosmetics, all of it. One thing that's really unique about Tonya is that she's also a childhood leukemia survivor, and she's passionate about eradicating toxins that surround her. She's also a mother, and one of her children has ADHD and another has learning disabilities. And she has seen the direct effect of how when you clean up the toxins in your environment, it can make a huge, massive difference in the health of your children, as she has seen it happen with her children. Now she dedicates her entire life, her time, and all her efforts in helping others do the same. Tonya has an incredible book called The Slightly Greener Method, and you're going to learn about why I love this book, The Slightly Greener Method. And she's written that for people so that they can learn how to take baby steps in their home. So you don't have to do it all overnight. You can do this in baby steps, but the whole entire point is that you get started today. So start with this podcast, and I will see you at the end of the show, where we talk about all of wonderful things that we're launching this year in 2022 through the Green Mustache and Richer Health, our companies that are all about helping you learn how to reverse your chronic degenerative diseases, starting with food as medicine. So let's welcome Tonya Harris to the show. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Eat Real to Heal podcast. I'm your host, Nicolette Richer, and on today's show, we have the wonderful Tonya Harris. Thank you, Tonya, for being on our show today.
Thank you so much for having me.
It is really a pleasure having you. As I was just saying, like before we started recording here, that, we focus on our podcast so much on chronic disease reversal using food as medicine. And while I teach my clients how to detoxify their kitchen and their food, and I teach them how to detoxify their home, we haven't actually done a podcast where it's really, really focusing on those external toxins that are around us, like in our home and our workplace. And so I'm really excited to really just dive deep into all of this and really tell our audience exactly what they need to know so that they can start taking the steps today to really cleaning up their environment. And then, of course, clean up your food as well. But this one's going to be really all about, the things that we do in and around our home and workplaces and schools. So I'm really excited to dive into this with you.
Oh, exciting. Me too.
So I just want to go back to, because when I first read your story, I thought potentially it stemmed because you had childhood leukemia. And
I
that,
did. Yeah.
yes. And how old were you when you were first diagnosed?
Oh, sure. I think it was about 2 weeks before my 7th birthday. And actually I'm coming up on 40 years diagnosed in this January, which
Wow.
is, yeah, when I think about that, it's just incredible.
That is
Yeah.
amazing. And did any of the work that you're doing now, have you thought about how and looked at the research and how that relates to leukemia? Or, and I know you have another story because you have 3 children, you're an awesome busy mom of 3, and a couple of them, I think, or one has a learning disability.
Yeah.
And so just tell us the relationship between you being diagnosed with leukemia, your childhood's disability, and then the toxins and where all of that stemmed from, your knowledge into all of this.
Oh, sure. Yeah, it really wasn't until 2006 that it really came into play. I was diagnosed back in 1982, but
Right.
yeah, it was really when my son was in 2nd grade that it kind of came full circle. But he started having attention issues at school, and the school had called me in to talk about it and to get him tested. And I don't know if it was just my past of being told to be careful what I eat, but I went home and I just asked for a little bit more time. So I went home and did a bunch of research. And back then in 2006, it wasn't as easy online,
No.
but I did so much. I read a lot of books, did some online. And what I found was there's a couple of ingredients, artificial colors and benzoate preservatives, like sodium benzoate, can actually cause hyperactivity. So I had seen the symptoms at home. I wasn't super surprised, but still, I was wondering if there was something that could be contributing to his symptoms. So I removed those from his diet. And then when I went back to the school just a few weeks later to do the follow up appointment, they no longer saw a need to test him. So while we definitely did not cure him, we still see the symptoms, and he's 23 now. um,
Oh,
we,
wow.
we lessened them enough that he could pay attention longer in school. And then that's really when I became hooked on, maybe there's a more natural approach. And I don't judge anybody who medicates because we would have done that
Yeah.
route had nothing else worked. But we were just lucky enough that this did work. And then I started doing more research and found that, oh my gosh, there's so many different things that can be lurking in our products. And it's not just what we
Yeah.
eat, it's also what we inhale and what we put on our skin. And that's really when I decided to dig in a little deeper and be able to help other parents do,
Right.
help their children as well.
Yeah, that's incredible that you went down the path of, diving into the research, because a lot of people do that. They will go to Google and, or go into, like, somebody who might be go into Google Scholar, where you get access to all the journal articles as well.
Mhm.
Um, but, people will go down that research path, and you can come up with lots of different, solutions. But the difference between what you did and just researching is that you took action. You actually said, okay, I'm going to test this out. I'm going to cut it out. I'm going to see if that makes a difference. And I think that I just have to say, um, thank you for doing that, because by doing that, you've now created all of this other incredible learning and how to's and, paths that other people can follow because you've lived it out with your child. So I just have to say thank you for actually taking action.
Oh, well, thank you. That means a lot.
Yeah, and it is also a lot to do that, because I have 3 kids as well, and I know what it's like. Like, we're constantly battling, like, between, like, my kids are teenagers and the stuff that they're bringing home now food wise. I'm just like, why are you eating that?
Yes.
And they're like, it tastes good, and I make my own money, so I can buy it.
Going
So
through that now too.
yeah. So now, earlier you said that you had always been mindful about, like, the kinds of foods that you needed to eat. Was that as a result of having leukemia, and who had mentioned that to you prior?
Yeah, my doctors had mentioned that to me growing up. So I really went through chemo from first to fourth grade, but I really went through first grade through the age of 21 being seen by the doctor at least every
Right.
year.
Yeah.
So I was really being told to be careful what I eat that whole time.
Right. And at any point, had the doctors indicated potentially why you have leukemia? And just for any of our audience listening out there, they know that when I work with clients, I don't try and find the source of the illness because
Mhm.
there's often so many multiple different things that can affect your genes, that could turn, oncogenes on and off, that allow cancer to thrive, or your body to actually deal with the cancer on its own without you knowing. So I'm not always looking for the source, but at the time, like, had they ever given any indication?
No, we're not sure. And I've never really tried to find out or the source just
Yeah,
because it's kind of scary.
it
um,
is scary. Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
but I just know that there's so many different factors that can, like you said, turn genes on or off, or, you
Mhm.
know, nobody else in my family got it. So
Right.
why at the age of almost 7 did I get it?
Yeah.
But so there's really no clear explanation. I've done a little bit of research, and this is just totally side note, a
Yeah.
little research on the side. But to me, it kind of triggers me. So I don't do a whole lot of what could cause that.
Yeah,
Just
I
to,
was just curious at all because that was a long time ago. We've made lots of advancements in
exactly.
certain ways, but there's a lot more that we know now, and we know how diet affects the health, and we know how toxins affect, the production of our cells in healthy ways, and we know a lot more. But at the same
Mhm.
time, so I think it's more important just to know all the different areas of our life that we can clean up. But I was just curious if
No,
had
it's a great
anybody had ever.
question. Yeah, I know. And I've never told anybody that before either, that I just don't do the research because it scares me.
Yeah. Oh,
So,
no, of course it does. Yes, of course. And that's why I don't go
yeah.
there with my clients as well. Like,
Uh,
some people will say it's trauma related, and some people say it's toxin related, and some people will say it was their diet, or,
oh, yeah.
whatever it was. But, and I just say, you know what, let's just focus on what we need to do now to ensure our health for years to come. So, you have an incredible book, which I need to get my hands on, called The Slightly Greener Method, which is all about detoxifying your home. And, so in easier, faster, less expensive ways. And I just love that because it's really important. We're in the day and age where we have to think of so many different things. And so it needs to be cheap. It needs to be fast. It needs to be easy. So I love that you made that book. So for everybody out there, we're going to have the links below. Can we dive into some of the toxins that you talk about in your book that are like absolutely necessary that we stay away from? And what can we do in and around our homes and our offices that are easy, quick, and fast?
Oh, sure. Well, it's such a great question. And it's such a big question, too, because there's so many places where these can lurk. So in this book, what I did really was, excuse me, the way I started was I wanted to start. Well, actually, I started way too big, is what I should say. I started way too strong, drove myself and my family nuts. I told my kids, no more of this anymore, no more of that.
Yeah.
So, what I really found was, what if instead of throwing everything away and then having to replace it all and not knowing with what, why don't I just concentrate on these? Why don't I just start with my why, which is what I recommend my clients
Yeah.
do and what I do in this book too, because not only does it help keep you on track when things get hard, but also it really helps you narrow down. So I thought, what if I just concentrate on those ingredients to avoid first that just have to do with ADHD, which is
Yeah.
what my son was having issues with or symptoms of. So when you start there, that's a really great starting place. And then I really believe that if you address what's in your kitchen, what's in your bathroom with your personal care and cleaning products, and what's with your cleaning products, that if you just concentrate on those 3 areas, you can make a big impact on your home. So just starting small in those areas. And then to help decide what can make the biggest impact in your home, I kind of developed this READ method. I call it READ. And if you follow these 4 steps, you can follow them all in the same week or day, or just a few at a time. You can make a big impact. So if you want me to go into those, I can go ahead and.
Yeah, yeah, let's
Okay.
dive into those because I think they're absolutely great, and it's easy to remember, and it can allow people to get started literally like the minute this podcast is over.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so R stands for replace, and that's replace plastics in the kitchen. And the reason for this is because if you heat foods or you heat your plastic up, one thing that can happen is that the chemicals can leach into the foods or beverages. So some of these chemicals can be BPA or phthalates, And phthalates made the news a couple years ago for showing that parents who had or moms who had higher levels of phthalates in their bodies, their kids had lower IQ after birth, up until the age of 7. And then BPA is linked to behavior issues in children. And the phthalates can also act as endocrine disruptors, meaning that they can get into the way of our hormones doing their jobs. They can block or mimic hormones, or they can over or underproduce, which is dangerous for all of us, but especially for kids during certain times of development. So many issues in the body can crop up. So that's really why we want to avoid plastics in the kitchen. So that means maybe replacing food storage containers. And instead of looking at all your containers and going, oh my gosh, I have so many, just start out the slightly greener way and just look at your top 1 or 2 or 3 most used sizes and replace those first.
Yeah.
And same thing with reusable water bottles. And even beware of things that still are plastic to say BPA free, because commonly what companies will do is they'll replace the BPA, which is bisphenol A, with something like bisphenol S or bisphenol F, which are shown to have similar, if not a little bit stronger health effects. Yeah. So if you do buy something and say it's a glass storage container, but it has a plastic lid, because this is another question I get, is to put the hot food into the glass storage container and then let it cool, and don't let it hit that plastic lid before you put it in the fridge. So that's one easy thing to do, is just replace a few food storage containers at first.
Yeah, I love that, and it is very doable to do this now in 2021, because there's so many great companies that have, really great metal containers, glass containers that are easy to travel with for the kids. They all stack into each other. They're fantastic. So really now there's no excuse for doing it, because they're available everywhere. The other thing you can do that I just wanted to mention, a lot of those containers that are made by these really great companies, they can also be expensive. So you can also just save a lot of, like, we just save jars, or you can even go to the Reset Center and get jars and use those. And then we use like mason jars, because they're so durable that they can go in your kid's backpack, and, they just have the nice metal lid on them. And then you're able to use those as containers, and those cost, like, they're pennies or free even. So just to let people know, like, when it comes to replacing these containers, especially for our kids, we can keep it simple and inexpensive as well.
Such a great point. I know I talk about that too in my cleaning products. I save so many glass bottles. So they come in handy for so many different things.
So many things. And about the BPA too, I love that you brought that up, that often when a company is called out for having a chemical that is found to be toxic and dangerous, that they often will replace it with just a very similar product. Like right now, that's what's happening with Bayer, who bought Monsanto, and they have glyphosate. Well, now there's no longer glyphosate, it's called Liberty, but it's still basically the same product. They changed a couple things, but it's still a toxic substance. And so don't get fooled by a company using a name like Liberty, to instead of glyphosate. But yeah, this happens with companies all the time. So I love that you brought that up about, even if it says BPA free, you got to check the other things. The other thing I wanted to mention that was really interesting that happened to me when I was pregnant with my first child is my scent, like my smell became so acute. And I had this amazing plastic hiking water bottle from Mountain Equipment Co-op, which we have all over Canada. And I think maybe they have Mountain Equipment Co-op. It's like a sporting goods store, really big sporting goods store. And I kept on saying, ew, the water tastes really gross. Like, it really tasted like chemicals. And I thought it was my water, even the water filtered water taste, it would sit in the bottle for 10 minutes and taste terrible. And I wasn't putting hot water in there. It was just like regular room temperature water, cold water. And I kept saying, and everybody's like, I can't taste this. I can't taste this. So I went back and bought a new water bottle thinking my other one was damaged. And then all of a sudden MEC recalled across the whole country, recalled every single one of their water bottles, because that was the first time the BPA awareness came out. And if I hadn't been pregnant, I wouldn't have smelled it, because I never smelled it afterwards. But of course I stopped using plastic water bottles at that point. What can you suggest for people like myself? Like, I'm an endurance athlete, and so I'm on my bike a lot. And so I have water bottles that sit in my bike holders. But have you found any good solutions for athletes that have to throw their water bottles around?
Oh, that's a great question. And I'm glad you brought that up too, because another thing I get asked a lot is, when you have the water bottle in the car and it heats up and gets those
Yeah.
plastic chemicals, can I put it in the fridge when I get home? It's like, no, the plastic chemicals have already leached, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But for athletes, that's a great question too. I mean, I think just like a stainless steel water bottle that you can get and rinse it out after every time.
Yeah.
The good news, like you had mentioned too, is that a lot of these companies are responding with better products. So
Yeah.
now there are a lot of great stainless steel options and glass options, and there are some glass water bottles that are covered in silicone, so then
Yeah.
they won't break. So I hope that answers that question. But
Yeah, no, that's
I
a good
love that
idea.
point.
I forgot about the silicone wrapped glass bottles, and I could put those in my bike for sure. Yeah, so
Yeah.
that would work. And a stainless steel bottle, so that's good. Okay, good. What is the E in the READ method?
Oh, sure. That's eat organic as often as possible. And I know sometimes that's a little difficult, but the good news is that if you eat organic for as little as a few days, the pesticide levels in your body can dramatically drop.
Yeah.
And pesticides can act again as hormone disruptors. They can be toxic to the brain and nervous system. Some are linked to ADHD. There's so many different reasons why we should avoid them. And if you cannot eat organic, following the Environmental Working Group's 30 dozen, which has the highest levels of pesticides tested, or the Clean 15, which has the lowest, you can buy conventionally grown of the Clean 15, the foods
Yeah.
listed on there. But there's so many different reasons. And there's also some differing studies too, with whether or not organic is more nutritious and worth it. But for me, I like to err on the side of caution because I've also seen studies that show it's not only what organic has, it's what it doesn't have.
Yeah.
And it has fewer heavy metals. Like I think it was cadmium was one of them listed. But some did show that they did have more vitamin content and nutrient and antioxidant content. So for me, it is completely worth it.
Yeah, and you reminded me of a study. I used to teach, so I worked on our pesticide bylaw for the resort municipality of Whistler, and I used to teach about pesticides and needing to eliminate them out of our communities. But one of the studies that I remember presenting was they had children who ate conventionally grown food that was sprayed and children who ate only organic food, and same age, same community, and the child had to drop a marble into a jar from about 4 inches above the jar, and the kids that ate conventionally grown food would miss more times, like they wouldn't be able to get the marble in the jar. But they would switch the kid who were eating non-organic and put them onto organic, and within a week they were able to neurologically be able to make the connection. And it was just such a simple study that was done. But then what they did is they measured their pesticide levels in these kids, and they saw them drop by like 90%.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. That's incredible.
Yeah, it is
I'm so glad you brought that up.
yeah, such a great
Wow.
study. So you just reminded me about it. I totally forgot about it. So that's amazing. Yes. And eating organic, like with our clients who want to reverse their chronic diseases, really have to focus on eating organic because they need to close up their tight gap junctions in their gut lining, which is connected to their brain health. And so that gut brain axis can't heal with when you're eating conventionally sprayed foods. So it's really important for that. So I love that you bring that up. A, what is A?
Okay, A is to avoid artificial fragrance. And that's because that one term fragrance can be made up of dozens of chemicals, and we really don't know what they are because they're considered to be a trade secret. So companies are not required to disclose the individual ingredients. And I think I cannot remember the exact chemical association, but they've listed about 3,000 different chemicals that can make up fragrance. And some of them are toxic to the brain and nervous system. They're allergenic. They're hormone disrupting, cancer causing, so many different things. And we just don't know what they are. So avoiding plug-in air fresheners, spray air fresheners, things like that. And I hate to say candles because it's a big one. People get nervous. Yeah, I love candles, so it was hard for me. But
Yeah.
if we can
Any
avoid that as much
candles,
as possible.
all candles?
There are safer brands, which I love because it's just I love when we can replace something with something that is truly safer because
Yeah.
this shouldn't be a lifestyle of deprivation when
Yeah.
we're reducing toxins. The more we can make this work for our lifestyle, the better off and more sustainable these changes will be.
Yeah. So
So
what
there
are
are
some of
some.
the safer options for candles?
If you look for lead-free wicks, there's a lot out there with beeswax instead of regular paraffin wax, which can let off cancer-causing fumes and
Yeah.
just off gas into the air. There's some that are made with coconut wax, which I think is super interesting.
Oh,
And they have
yeah.
great scents and they're scented with essential oils. So if we can look for something like that, it's a great replacement. And then
Yeah,
just
that's
burning them
awesome.
on special occasions, not all the time.
Yeah, exactly. And not maybe having 100 of them going on at the same
Right.
time in your house too. Like everybody wants to have candles everywhere.
Exactly.
Yeah, for air quality especially, it's actually really important that you try and avoid that. And that's interesting about the lead-free wick because I didn't know about that at all. And yeah, about 20 years ago I used to make candles, but back then we weren't
Oh, yeah.
thinking about a lot of these things.
Exactly. We didn't know.
No, no. With the artificial fragrance and like the 3,000 different chemicals that make up fragrance, um, do you know much about the testing that goes on behind this? These
I
chemicals?
I'm not as familiar with the testing behind the chemicals, no.
Yeah, because I read a statistic that something like 80,000 chemicals come out every single year that are basically not really tested. They're
Oh,
very short-term studies. And then of
yeah,
course, when you
overall.
look at like the accumulation of all of these like 80,000 different chemicals in our life, it's like, what is
Mhm.
that cumulative effect? And so I just wasn't sure if you'd yeah, dove into like it would just be an interesting, maybe for a second book where you even just talk about like testing around these things.
Oh, yeah. Well, I
Um,
didn't know if you meant all in general or
yeah,
just in the fragrance chemicals, but yeah,
yeah,
chemicals overall, even in the personal care and beauty products, a very small percentage has been tested. And there's so
yeah,
many loopholes in these safety acts. So some of them they can get away with not disclosing the ingredients, especially for cleaning products, because it's considered to be a trade secret. And again, fragrance is in a lot of cleaning products. It's in a lot of beauty products. And sometimes you'll see it listed as parfum, which sounds
right.
super fancy, like
Yeah.
spa-like, but there's still the same chemicals. But there's so many different loopholes. And again, a lot of these, just because of the laws right now, they're kind of easy to get through some of these loopholes that there is just
Yeah.
a very small percentage, even some that weren't around when we were younger, as we were kids, that our
Yeah.
kids are being exposed to now.
Exactly. And even though when they put the word natural fragrance in front of it as well, it does, I bet you that does not mean natural.
Yeah, I still don't trust it. I like to
Yeah.
see made with essential oils or
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
along those lines. So,
Exactly. Exactly. And are there some good essential oil companies that you recommend?
I really like Mountain Rose Herbs. That's one I use, and Green Envy is another one. And I
Okay.
really think that those are probably the two I get most of mine from.
Okay, that's awesome. Okay, we'll put the links on there so people can get access to that and see where they can order them from. Okay, D in the read method.
Oh, sure. That is dust. And it's another one people don't like to hear because they think I'm going to tell them dust your house 24/7. um, but the thing is, dust is actually one of the biggest exposures to household chemicals, believe it or not, because I was surprised when I read that. But George Washington University did some studies and they found so many different things in dust that we would not be thinking about, like flame retardant chemicals, which can act as
Mm,
hormone disruption and again be toxic to the brain and nervous system. They also found phthalates, which again, hormone disrupting chemicals, and then even lead. So even if our house wasn't built in, that
yeah,
1978 previous to,
yeah,
we could be bringing it in on our shoes even from the soil. There's so many different ways these things can make their way into our homes. So one of the best things we can do and easiest is to remove our shoes before we walk in. And
right.
that cuts down on a lot. But if we can just dust the areas where our families spend the most time, like if you have small children and they're playing on the floor, if
Yeah,
in that area, bedrooms, family room, and then also it seems like the rest of the house becomes less dusty if we're keeping up on certain areas. It's
yeah.
it's amazing how much less time you have to spend overall once you start doing that.
Yeah, and that's interesting about the desk piece too, because the part you say like kids crawling on the floor, right? So a lot of times indoors we'll clean our floor with these cleaning chemicals, then put our toddlers on there who are walking on there and then touching everything and putting it in their mouth, plus it's getting absorbed through the skin. And then we take them outside and we take them to a park where they've sprayed with pesticides and we put them in the grass and they're crawling around and doing the same thing. So your kids are really being exposed to a lot of these chemicals because they're so close to the ground. And then they start walking and then we have have people idling their vehicles, and we have the dioxins leaving from the back of, exhaust of the car. And this is right at face level of our children, right? So, we see that like kids are really, really susceptible to this. Plus they have smaller bodies, so they have the same concentration going into these tinier bodies. So it's higher, it accumulates in their body. So the dust piece is interesting as well, because we also know that people who are exposed to dirt have healthier immune systems. So is there like a balance there? Because when I see this destroyed dust, I'm like thinking about the line of dust on my headboard, that I need to go tackle right after this. And, is there, I'm just curious for people who are now going to become like super obsessed with getting rid of all the dirt in their home.
Right. And that is such a great point. I haven't been asked that before, but I'm also of the belief that we need a little bit of dirt.
Yeah.
And if we're too clean, if we use too many antibacterial products, then we're actually, it can create superbugs. We destroy our immune system. So yeah, it is a healthy balance between completely cleaning our homes, so like antiseptic points, or just having that little bit of balance and getting a little bit of dirt and, getting some germs in our mouth. I mean, it helps build our immunity too.
Right. And I love that you brought that up, the difference between cleaning to the point where you're like wiping down everything with antiseptics and antibacterial products, because then that's destroying the healthy microbiome in your home, versus just getting rid of the dust, which is often a collection of those, like you walk on the carpet and those have fire retardants, and that blows in the air and lands on the shelves, and then you go and sweep, and then that goes into your face. And so it I like that distinction between the antibacterial version of cleaning versus just the dusting version of cleaning. And that makes me feel a bit calmer to be like,
exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
That's good.
Yeah.
No, that's good. That's good. Okay. So I love that you got into this because of the results you saw immediately with your child. And now he's 23 years old. And does he take these, being a 23-year-old, does he take care to make sure that he's not bringing in some of these, foods that he's ingesting that have these chemicals and other products?
Well, it's a fine balance. This is why I tell people, like, we just can teach our kids the best we know how. And he does do pretty well, I will say. And he's probably the one that listens to me the most and takes me the most seriously.
Right.
But he still buys things that don't have color. So he always says, well, I buy white toothpaste because I don't want the artificial colors. And he's pretty particular. He cooks a lot at home.
Oh,
So,
good.
and pretty healthy, but again, he's still in college. He's about to graduate in December. I'm so excited. But he's still a college student and he's around things, but I feel like, and he says the same thing. If he does enough healthy things, he doesn't have to worry so much about the unhealthy things, which really that's what we should all aim for, is if we can just work 80-20, that 80-20 rule comes in handy for so many things. This is something that we should make fit into our lifestyle rather than us trying to totally uproot our lifestyle and try to do this, because it's almost too hard when we do that.
Yeah.
So
if we
that
can really 80-20 rule is great.
Yeah. If we can just concentrate 80% on doing the right thing, we don't have to worry about the 20%, especially for our kids. Like if you tell your kid no more cookies ever again, I mean, they're going to go somewhere and eat like 100 cookies rather than the few.
100%, 100. I usually tell my kids, you know what, like, I get that you're going to eat that stuff, but can you just like at least show me that you've eaten, a few healthy meals in the day. And then the rest of the stuff is just like, okay, I'm going to trust your body will take care of that because you ate healthy, a few times. And the kids also, and I'm assuming for your son too, just like my kids, because they've been able to experience the difference between having chemicals and not having chemicals and what that does to them. Like my kids will often say like, oh my God, I haven't eaten well for a little bit. Like I need to eat something healthy, versus if you're just always perpetually in that state of like every single day, every meal, every cleaning product is assaulting you in these negative ways, you never get to feel good.
No, and I love that point. And I feel like I could talk about this part forever because it's like, I love it.
Yeah, let's talk about this part.
Yeah, I was going to say, it reminds me of a story of my son, because again, if we tell them, no, you can't have that, they're like, why? But if we tell them why, so I have a really good example with him too, is when he was back in, I think it was junior high and wrestling, and he has asthma. So one day he went out to the garage, and this is a whole nother topic, but my husband buys popsicles. He's gotten better and buying like, not colored, artificially colored,
Yeah.
but still. But my son went out there and he came back in with a yellow popsicle, and I was just like, ugh,
Yeah.
not cool. So I just kind of looked at him and I said, did you know that yellow number 5 can actually worsen asthma symptoms? And you have a big meet tomorrow. So do you want to go to practice and then tomorrow just have some trouble? And he just kind of looked at the popsicle, just kind of had this crazy look on his face, and he went over to the garbage and threw it away. I was like,
Wow.
that was easy, you know?
Yeah.
And still to this day, like he just went back to school not too long ago. Over the summer, he buys really healthy food over the summer because he knows when he goes
Wow.
back to school, it's harder. But he'll even call and be like, yeah, I made dinner in the crock pot tonight because, I needed something healthier. So
Wow.
it's amazing, like you said, if we let our kids know the difference between how they feel when they're healthier, and us too as adults,
Yeah.
when we realize how much better we feel, it makes the changes so much easier to go along with. We feel better and better, we'll make more and more changes. So I think that's just that was a great point you made.
Yeah, and I love that story because it's really an example of how you can empower people to make their own choice. Like, hey, did you know? And then you just leave it at that, as opposed to, you can't do that, or using a fear-based approach, or, you're going to get sick if you do that. But hey, did you
Mhm.
know? And then you are empowering them to consider that. And then they might use that in other areas of like, oh, did you know this cleaning product has this? And so I really love that story because I think we're also in such a fear-based society where we have, so many individuals who are afraid of, like how clean something is, or afraid if the food is, potentially toxic. And is this healthy to eat? Like, can I eat a carrot? Like I read carrots are, whatever, high on the glycemic index. So we have so many
Right.
things now because there's so much information. And so we just need to all support each other so that we're making decisions based on just wanting to better ourselves instead of it being based always on fear.
Exactly. And that's really why I wrote my book too, and even changed the name of my company to Slightly Greener, because
Mm,
before I was concentrating on scare tactics. And I didn't mean to.
yeah,
It's a scary topic. It's just, it is what it
yeah,
is, but then I was realizing, like, wait a minute, but people want solutions. And,
yeah,
as I've gone through this, I've been doing this since 2006, but really this business has been since I think 2016. That
right.
really there's so many products that have come onto the market because people are educating themselves and they're
Mhm.
demanding these changes. So there's companies that are cleaning up their products, and so many different companies that are developing every day that actually do have really great, safer products. And it's been really exciting to watch.
Yeah, no, that's incredible work that you are doing because people do need to learn about this and to know that it is literally life changing. Like you changed the trajectory of your son's life just through that experiment of removing a few things and colorings out of his food. And then he was able to go back to school, not get labeled, continue on and graduate from elementary school, high school, and now college. Like that is huge, where his life could have had another trajectory, right?
Oh,
It
yeah.
could have just gone down like many different routes, but you really set them up on a good path. And as parents, that's what we're here to do. We're just here to like, you know what? Here's a good path. Let's see if you can follow it. And yeah, that slightly greener method is awesome for people because it puts less pressure. So I have a question around some of the additional toxins that we really need to pay attention to. And that, like, maybe just some of the things that we ignore because we like the product and we just want to use it. But what are some of those additional things that we need to avoid?
um, just looking for toxins, or I mean ingredients to be on the lookout for.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
names to,
Just,
okay.
yeah.
Well, I think like in food, one of the biggest ones I like to recommend avoiding, is monosodium glutamate.
Mhm.
And a lot of people think about it just in maybe Chinese food or takeout, but really it's the number one preservative used like in the world, or flavor enhancer. So you can find it in so many different processed foods and snack foods, and it's actually kind of hard to find without it. And then a sneaky way companies can get away with saying no MSG added for the people who are trying to avoid it. Um, you can see no MSG added on the front of the can or the product, and it's got a little I don't remember what the name of the symbol is, but like a little symbol of a cross type thing.
Mhm.
And then you look on the back and it says, except for that which is naturally added in some of these things. So if you see like hydrolyzed wheat protein, that contains MSG. Autolyzed yeast is another one. So that's why it's so important for us to educate ourselves on these labels to know what to look for, because
Yeah.
some of the ways that food companies can get away with it is that. But something about MSG that I always thought was interesting is it actually turns off the hormone leptin that tells us that we're full. So if we've ever sat in front of a TV and eaten a bag of chips, which we also shouldn't sit in front of the TV and eat a bag of chips,
Yeah.
because that also shuts down some of our digestive processes.
Yeah.
But if you've ever eaten a whole bag of chips, then you can blame maybe the MSG because it didn't tell your leptin didn't tell your body that you were full. It also has a lot to do with the prefrontal cortex and affecting the neurotransmitters that have to do with organization and behavior and impulsivity. So there's so many different reasons to avoid MSG. So that's one of them I definitely recommend avoiding in food.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I was reading that there's like dozens and dozens of different names for MSG. So they don't have to, like, it won't just say MSG. Most stuff now will say no MSG, but it'll have like 5 different types of MSG in one product even, because there's just so many different names for it. Okay, so beyond MSG, what are some other things that we can look for?
Actually, BPA is another one, believe it or not. Food is actually one of the biggest exposures to BPA. So not only the plastic food storage containers, but also canned items.
Yeah.
And they put it in the epoxy lining to separate something like tomatoes from the metal lining of the can. So if we can avoid canned food as much as possible, because again, if it's BPA free, they might have added something else that's similar. So something like that. Another one I usually like to talk about is carrageenan or carrageenan. I'm not sure the pronunciation of that
Me
one.
neither, yeah.
Yeah, so I'll just that one.
Yeah.
But that one's used as an emulsifier, and that's linked to things like IBS and inflammation in the colon cancer. They've done some research on that. So even though that one is marketed as being, coming from seaweed, just because it's natural or comes from a natural source doesn't mean it's any safer. So I always like to bring that one up. And then the other ones I always like to bring up are artificial colors, which again, we know that they're linked to behavior issues. And actually in Europe, many of the products over there have it labeled saying this product is known to cause hyperactivity in children. So there's a warning, but not here. The other thing is the top 3 most used: red 40, yellow number 5, yellow 6. Yellow number 5 again can worsen asthma symptoms, but they also can be, they can contain benzidine, which is a cancer causer. So there's a link to cancer with those artificial colors too. And then benzoate preservatives like sodium benzoate, they can be found in things like, pickles, anything that's preserved, something like that. And what they found when you do the two together, the artificial colors and the sodium benzoate, they can cause hyperactivity issues in children who have never even been diagnosed with ADHD. They just all of a sudden might become hyperactive. So those are definitely some things I recommend avoiding.
Yeah. And this is, these are just small things that you could do. Like you could just have a little card in your wallet, that you just whip it out again. Cause I know it's hard to remember these things, and always look it up on the phone. And so you can just have a card in your wallet. So that way, when you're at the store, you can pull out the card. What I like to tell people, like, for example, when you said no canned food, well, when my clients are reversing their chronic diseases, there's no canned food. And because of all the things that you mentioned, as well as that food was packaged like maybe a year to 2 years ago, we need food that is like the most nutritious, the most fresh. And so one of the things that I say to people, it's like, hey, one of the easiest ways to shop so you don't even have to read labels is you just buy food that has one ingredient. And, so you can go buy fruit roll-ups that have all of these chemicals that you're, talking about, or you can buy an apple, right? Or you can go buy like a bag of McCain's potato fries from the freezer, or you can just buy the potato and literally just wash the potato and throw it in the oven. And so you just slowly start transitioning some of these things that are your favorite eating items and just go, oh, what would it be like to consume that in its whole form, one ingredient form? And then there's just no labels that you even have to worry about reading. Yeah, because it is hard to remember a lot of this, and because the chemicals are always changing, right? And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, how do we remember this? But that little card in the wallet, somebody told me that trick once, and that really worked. Um, so with the effects, like we know that these chemicals disrupt our hormones. We know that they can stimulate the growth of cancer cells. We know that it is, it affects our mood. It affects our ability um, to be able to control or manage our nervous system. But, how are we seeing this difference play out between children and adults?
Oh, sure. I love that question. And children are actually just more susceptible to these health effects. And you had mentioned earlier they have smaller bodies, but they're taking in the same amount of toxins as we are. But that term, children aren't little adults,
Yeah.
really rings true for this too, because they don't have the detoxification pathways necessary to detoxify these chemicals and to get them out as quickly as an adult can. So that's one reason. They also have thinner skin. And like you said too, they're more closely tied to their environment. They're crawling on the floor, they're licking their hands, they're chewing their toys, the dog, anything that they can get their hands on. So there's so many different ways. But actually, when these chemicals get into their bodies, and again, like we had mentioned, so many of these chemicals have not been tested, and so many weren't around like when we were younger. There's so many now that with so many years of life ahead of these children, and we don't know how these chemicals act synergistically. So we don't know what this can cause later in life, which is why it's so important to really, especially for our kids, for us too, but especially for our kids, we don't know what we're preventing down the road.
Yeah. And that is something that we really, really have to consider, because we're living in a world right now where we do have 80,000 different chemicals, circulating in our world, in our homes, our offices, our playgrounds, in any given year. And 1 in 2 people are getting diagnosed with cancer right now. And we know that 97% of these cancers are not genetic, only about 3% of them are. So that means our environment, what we're exposing our body to internally and externally, is contributing to that. And, with all the information that you're providing, like, this is the power that you have. You've given people this power to be able to take their health back and, really try and mitigate those future events, like being diagnosed with cancer, like being, potentially having kids that are growing up with learning disabilities, because of these simple chemicals that we can choose to avoid.
Exactly. And even if we already have something going on like cancer or a learning disability, that shows that we already have a toxic overload in our body. So the
Yeah.
more that we can empty that toxic load bucket, as I've heard it called, the better off we'll be, even if we're already currently in something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely helps people with managing their conditions and even reversing them as well, for sure. So, what is the difference between men and women? How do these chemicals affect the different genders?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. And I've studied a little bit of that, but some of the studies I've read where certain things affect males more than females or females more than males, they actually don't have a definite answer for yet.
Hmm.
They've just done the studies and know it's there, but more studies are needed. So that's such a great question, but I don't exactly know the answer to that. But different hormones is one thing.
Yeah.
So both genders have different levels of hormones. That's where we really need to be careful of these endocrine disruptors. There's also another class of endocrine disruptors called obesogens, and these are endocrine disruptors that can actually cause weight gain.
Mm.
So it's just a lot of things about, I'd say hormones is a big issue, but that's not one that I 100% know the answer to.
Right. And I know that I love that, like what you said about how we need more research done in this specifically. And, one of the things in science is that we always have to be careful to say, like, this doesn't cause that, or this does cause that. We're looking
Mhm.
for statistical significance to say, that yes, there's, some probability that it does, but I love what you said earlier about the precautionary principle, that the studies will eventually come out, and it might take years. People have to fund the studies, they have to do the studies, somebody has to be willing to publish the studies. So also just because we haven't read the studies. It's not because they weren't done. It's just that nobody decided to publish them. So while we're waiting for the science to catch up, we do need to use that precautionary principle where we just say, you know what, my body's amazing. We don't want to put these toxins in. We may not understand how it affects, men versus women, but let's just take the precautionary principle, which is, I love that you brought that up earlier. And especially now because sterility in men is increasing and infertility in women is increasing. Like, we know a lot of this is due to our lifestyle and all of these chemicals that we are taking in. So sure, the science might not be definitive to say this causes that, but we can start, what did you call it? Reducing our toxic bucket overload.
Yeah, exactly. And again, a lot of these we already know, like you said, we know the results. So we know that the sterility and things like that, we already know some of these are linked to certain conditions. And just because we don't know the science yet doesn't mean, so again, I always like to recommend erring on the side of caution and just in case. But also, you can't really perform these experiments on humans because who's going to volunteer for that? So a lot of them we just don't know, but we know there are links to, or probable cause. I always like to say this can cause, this may cause, and some people are like, does it or doesn't it? And my answer to that is, we don't know, because what would cause it in me might not cause it in you. There's so many different ways, like, our detoxification pathways, our nutrient status, so many different things, our environment that can turn on or turn off these genes, or something that will cause these conditions, but always just erring on the side of caution if there is that link.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. I love that. And yeah, we all could be functioning that way, because in Europe, they tend to function more that way. They use a precautionary principle more often than not. They don't wait for the science to say. They go, you know what, this doesn't feel good, so we're not going to say it's okay for humans to do this. So let's just ban that chemical until the studies come out saying, no, it's absolutely safe. Whereas in North America, like the US and Canada, we're like, let's use it until we see enough people dying and getting sick, and then we'll ban it. And then usually you can't ban it at that point. It takes years to pull it out of the market. And so Europe definitely, they do a lot better in this area than we do here. We can learn from the Europeans for sure. So what is one of the biggest mistakes people make when trying to clean their home?
Oh gosh, I would say it's using those antibacterial and coming in, everything blazing too hard. And again, too, in the time we're in and the germs that we're worried about, going in way too strong on some of these, because they found really that just plain old soap and water is really the ideal way, especially with this virus in particular. They found that it's got an envelope membrane, so a little bit of friction will break down that membrane, and then we can get rid of that virus in our homes. Same thing with hand washing. That's why they recommended hand washing is so important, even over hand sanitizer. So if we can just use things like soap and water in our homes, we don't have to come in, with the bleach and the wipes, the disinfectant wipes. We can really just use soap and water. And then I have another cleaning product that I recently found. If you want to know like what that is, it's amazing. Because even now I saw they're doing shortages in my area. I've seen on the news that they're stopping people from buying some of these disinfectant products, or they're at least putting a limit on them.
Wow.
And I was actually at Disney World last year when everything shut down. I did all the research and they said, okay, you have until probably April before you should really not travel. So I packed up all my vitamin C, my hand sanitizer, we went. Everything shut down in the middle. And by the time I came home, I couldn't get my hands on toilet paper or disinfectants. And I was freaked out.
Right.
So I did a lot of research, and two things that you can do that's a little less toxic if you want to disinfect is to actually use hydrogen peroxide or rubbing alcohol in the place of bleach. So the thing that a lot of people do wrong though, when they try to disinfect, is not doing it correctly with cleaning first, because dirt and grime will actually lessen the effectiveness of these disinfectants. Also not wetting the surface thoroughly enough and not letting it sit long enough.
Oh, interesting.
So I was using that. And then I found this product that I think is so amazing. It's called electrolyzed water. And it actually turns regular water into hypochlorous acid. I think I have that right. And sodium hydroxide. So it's a cleaner and a disinfectant. It's completely non-toxic. and it's rated on the EPA's list N for fighting coronavirus. But it's rated for ICUs and schools and hospitals. So I've been using that, and I've replaced all my cleaning products with it.
And it's just water, because all they do is adjust the pH of the water.
Yeah, you just put a capsule of salt water and vinegar in there, and it's just a little countertop machine, and it's amazing. And I don't do well with bleach, so it has a little chlorine scent, if chlorine is a word.
Yeah. We're gonna make it a word.
We are. I just verbed it. I don't know what I just did.
Perfect.
Yeah. So using something like that, it's so easy, and it's, a lot of these things, like you had mentioned also before about, they can be expensive starting out, especially cleaning products. But the good news is that so many of them are either concentrated or powdered or something like this with these capsules. There's cents on the dollar in the long run. They last longer. And again, not having to buy all these cleaning products. I've replaced, I think, almost all of them. The only thing I have is one all multi-purpose cleaner that I love that's Castile soap based, and that's it. Right. So we don't need as much as we think we do. It's just clever marketing to say that we need a different disinfectant or a different cleaner for every surface of the home. That's just not true. You can DIY things. If you're not the DIY type, I'm not usually, but I can make 22 chapsticks in 4 minutes, or I can make 4 cleaning products in 30 seconds. These things are actually easier, and it's actually kind of more fun lifestyle to live because we feel better. Our allergy symptoms lessen. There's so many different things you can do, but going back to that electrolyzed water, it's just such a quick and easy way to clean your home and not have to go in and just be, because if we're killing everything, that's not going to help our immune systems.
Yeah, because we're creating those super bugs, and then we don't have any resiliency. And then, we need that diversity of bacteria in our life. And bacteria will keep itself in balance as long as we don't go in and disrupt it, and often when we do try and get rid of all that bad bacteria, it actually proliferates as well. And it just ends up taking over. So you like, as humans, we think we can control that whole microbiome environment, but we really cannot. Like, we really need to kind of step away, let it balance itself out. And the way we do that is, like you said, like just water and soap, and even for people who are spraying their foods and putting all the chemicals to clean their vegetables and their fruits, studies have shown if you just like fill your sink up with water, clean your sink out, but fill it up with water, or just run the fruits and vegetables underwater for 3 seconds, not even with any soap, you kill 99.9% of anything that could be harmful to you. That's it. Like, just water is enough to often do this. So I love that. Those are really, really good tips. I often sometimes just, lemon, I squeeze it into a water bottle and spritz that, or some vinegar. Sometimes I don't like the smell of vinegar, but we actually started using just microfiber cleaning cloths because our university did a study that showed that just using the water in the microfiber cloth cleans 99.9%, the same effectiveness as like using bleach, but you're not damaging the good bacteria, bad bacteria. You're like taking enough of the bad bacteria away so that that everything is like safe, clean, disinfected, and all you're using is water and a microfiber cloth.
I know. When I started looking at those too, I was so amazed, and it has something to do with the positive and the negative draw, but it can pick up dirt and dust and leave your surface clean with just a little bit of water. And that's all I use now because it's so good to know. And then there's, you have to wash them super carefully so you don't destroy the fibers, but that's the only drawback. I mean, they're so easy to have. I've cut down on my paper towel use, and
exactly. We just have a big stack of them, and they are amazing. So one of the questions that I have, because there's so many cleaning products out there on the market and they're all labeled green and natural. So like, are these green cleaning products truly what they say that they are? Are they natural, and do they work?
Not necessarily. And I love this question because just because they market it as safer for the environment doesn't mean it's safer for you. So a lot of times, there's so many different ways that they can get around this. And especially same thing with beauty care. They'll say like, no parabens, but you look on the back and you're like, ooh, but it's got a lot of something else, a lot of other things. Same thing with the cleaning products. But the hard thing about the cleaning products is, again, there's so many proprietary formulas and loopholes that companies don't have to list every single ingredient. So something that you'll commonly see on the back of the label is anionic surfactants. well, which anionic surfactants were used? We don't even know, or enzymes. Well, we don't know which
Right.
ones. And cleaning products can actually off gas into the air even when they're not being used. So that's another issue. But a lot of these green cleaning products, if you look on the back, they have some ingredients that you just know are not necessarily non-toxic. So they could be marketed as green and not having certain things, like maybe no phosphates or things like that, but they have other things. So that's why, again, so important for us to educate ourselves as consumers, because cleaning products are really one of the hardest labels to read. But
Yeah.
if we know what to look for rather than what not to look for, or again, we can make our own. We can we can do so many things with Castile soap, and vinegar, as long as we don't use it on stone surfaces like granite, because it can etch. There's so many
Right.
other things that we can do, but it's very important to actually look and try to decipher the labels if we can on those green products.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up because my daughter the other day too, she saw something and she was like, but mom, it's biodegradable. And I'm like, oh, we haven't had this discussion about biodegradable, and just because something is biodegradable, you have to ask how long does it take to biodegrade in nature when it's exposed
Mhm.
to heat and light and other things in the environment, but a lot of these products can take like 1,000 years to biodegrade. It's biodegradable, but it takes a
Right.
1,000 years. But what's it doing in our human body is the question, yeah, that we have to ask. So I'm really glad that you spoke to that. And again, it just comes down to, like, I love what you said, like, you don't have to buy all those plastic bottles anymore. You can literally have like a wonderful reusable bottle, spray bottle that you refill. And you can just make your own cleaning products, like 32 chapsticks in 6 seconds, or,
Yeah,
like you mentioned. And
exactly. Or a window cleaner. It's just 50-50 blend of distilled water and white vinegar. And
yeah,
it's so easy. So I buy vinegar in glass bottles, and I'll either attach a spray pump. So I'll save my spray pump from other cleaning products, or you can ask neighbors, just,
yeah,
really clean them out and attach those to even the rubbing alcohol top or the hydrogen peroxide or white vinegar. And it makes it so much easier to spray down a surface to disinfect or clean. There's so many different
yeah.
fun, cheaper things that you can do.
And you free up all your cupboard space instead of having all
Oh,
those. Yeah, that's what I love
exactly.
too. That's what I
Yeah.
love too. And how old are your other two kids?
Oh, sure. Oh gosh, they both just had birthdays. So 18, no, 19, 17, 19, and 23.
Right. And
Yeah.
and so I love how you talked about your oldest son, and navigating that. And so how is it with your other kids? Like, are they, super on board with everything, or, what are they like around the house with, and especially with a mom who just knows a lot of information about, cleaning products?
Exactly. I know. And it's hard.
Yeah.
They do not take me as seriously. So I will say, and again, they're teenagers, they're driving, they have jobs, they can go get whatever they want food wise.
Yeah.
My 19-year-old is a fully licensed hairstylist. She
Oh,
did
interesting.
cosmetology school during high school. So she's highlighting hair, she's using all the chemicals. So what I do is, just at home, I buy as many products for her as I can
Yeah.
and have safer products for her here. And then, the food too, with what we're cooking and what we're doing. So it's easier for her to do the 80-20 rule or the 60-40
Yeah.
rule, whatever it is with what she's using. But again, there's just so many other things that we can do to support. So when we do have those other things, whether it's in our career or anything that
Yeah.
we don't have control over, there's so much that we do at home. And then my 17-year-old too, again, it's a little tougher. They love their makeup. So I just try to buy
Yes.
them, I try to sneak in the safer makeup and
Yeah.
as much as I can and buy that for them. Or again, just explaining to them why.
Yeah.
So, with the body sense and the stuff they're using, I finally got them to stop using those. Oh my gosh. I mean, I would choke every
I know.
day.
It's and the
No,
more you don't use those products, it's amazing how our body becomes so sensitive when you
yes.
smell somebody else wearing these things, and you're just like, oh my gosh.
Oh, I
And you
know.
actually can decipher the chemicals in them too when you're not, like, if you don't expose yourself to that, then all of a sudden you
Mhm.
recognize, oh my God, that stuff is not good. Like, it's making me want to choke. Whereas when you're
Yeah.
using it every day, it's almost like your body shuts down and doesn't even recognize it anymore.
Hmm.
So give yourself, like I said, like to say to people, like, hey, you know what, just for 3 weeks, try not using all of these things, and then go back to trying to use it. And you'll realize how strong it is.
Oh yeah. Same thing with candles or your scent or anything.
Yeah.
So again, going back to the kids is I don't want to tell them, no, you can't have that. Like stop
Yeah.
using that. I feel like the more we talk with them rather than at them,
Yeah.
the better they do. So I'd kind of just make a joke. I'm like, well, I don't know. You're just, your hormones. I don't know,
Yeah.
just trying to just go up there and just kind of make light of it, but just be like, if you have acne, because for a while there, I don't remember, one of them was breaking out. It's like,
Yeah.
could be some of your, believe it or not, your cologne or something,
Yeah.
or your body spray. So just kind of going up there and just kind of mentioning, or just kind of making a little like light of it, but not telling them no and no more. I feel like that's the worst
Yeah.
part, and that backfires on me 100% of the time.
Yeah, people need
So,
an alternative. They need to know, like,
mhm.
everything that you've given us, like, okay, instead of this, use this. And definitely with our kids, we have to show them those alternatives. And, it's not just a matter of like, stop using unhealthy products, but hey, I
Mhm.
like what you said, like you just sneak the products in. And we did that with, the brand might be costly to some, but we
Mhm.
started using Beauty Counter.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And, the owner of that company, she's done a ton of research as well. And she's really tried to clean up her cosmetic line and beauty care line. I don't know what you think about Beauty Counter. We're not sponsored by them, so I think we can say whatever we want. But do you have any thoughts on that company?
I think it's definitely cleaner. I just don't really affiliate myself with network marketing necessarily
Right.
like
Yeah.
that. So just because I want to remain completely unbiased. So I don't really
Right.
say too much when it comes to something like that. But I think it is definitely a cleaner brand.
Yeah.
So something to look at for sure.
Yeah. And so can I ask you what, like right now, you look beautiful and your face is shining and amazing, but you also don't look like you have a lot of makeup on. So do
Yeah,
you use any makeup products? And if you do, what do you use?
I do. I love 100% pure. I don't really have anything on right now. I have mascara on, and I think that's about it.
Awesome. Love it.
Yeah, yeah, because I feel like that's the slightly greener thing. But I have TV interviews this week, and I won't
Right.
necessarily use the safest products because some of them,
Right.
that's why I always said too, like keeping your home non-toxic without tossing your favorite mascara is one of the things I say.
Right.
So when I do have a special occasion, there are some great mascaras and makeups that are great for every day. I just choose to not wear makeup because I know a lot of those ingredients can age your skin.
Yeah.
So I found a great skincare line. So I just really try to take care of that way, wear SPF. But there are definitely, I like it 100% pure. My skincare is a combination of a couple different brands, Alatura and Green Envy.
Right.
So I kind of feel like if you don't use too much, because a lot of times we
Yeah.
think we need all these different things, and what they can do is actually age our skin, which means we need more things to come in and
Yeah.
correct the damage. So, I'm going to be 47 in January, so it's something I'm just really cautious about, and just trying to use the cleanest products because I really feel like some of those other ones can really age the skin faster.
Yeah. And I have found the same thing that, I mean, I use water to wash my face and use maybe sometimes coconut oil to remove mascara if I'm
Yes.
wearing it, and which is really easy. So like, again, you reduce all of that packaging and that plastic packaging that comes into your house when you don't have to buy these products. And
Mhm.
as well, your skin just gets to breathe, which I think is really important. And I know not everybody is in that place. Like some people have to be in a place where they look fresh and alive all the time.
Right.
And so then they tend to wear more makeup and more cover-ups and things like that. But there are definitely brands out there that you could lean towards in using. And again, remembering that, like you said, don't get influenced by the green marketing, the greenwashing that some companies. So you really have to dive in to know these ingredients for sure. Like it's really important to do that.
Yes.
Um, no, I love that. And so, and your kids are your kids your son, you have an older son and then two
Mhm.
girls?
Then two girls. Yep.
Yeah. So they're wearing makeup, I'm sure. And
They are. Yeah, a
yeah,
little bit safer brands. I don't think they wear it every day because I found
yeah,
too that once you get used to not wearing so much, because I used to wear makeup every single day,
yeah, me too.
you kind of get used to not wearing it. And like I had skin problems clear up really fast.
Yeah,
Um, but again, for some who do have to wear them every day, the good news is there's so many great clean brands that are out there that have great products.
yeah. Yeah, no, I just love how this information that you're passing on to your kids, and knowing that kids as well will take detours, but then they usually all come back. Often it's when they have their own kids and they're like, I got to keep my kids healthy. And they have that even bigger motivation for themselves, which is
Exactly.
amazing. So can you tell me, how can listeners find out more about you and all the work that you're doing so that they can learn how to detoxify their homes in an easier, faster, safer, less expensive way?
Oh, sure. My website is slightlygreener.com. And the book is called The Slightly Greener Method. That's available wherever books are sold. And it also comes with a website that is just for the book. And it has those downloadable cheat sheets of ingredients to avoid that are mentioned in the book, just because I want to help supplement so that it becomes easier. Because I really feel like it becomes automatic once you start doing this.
Yeah.
So things to support you there. And then Instagram, I'm Slightly Greener. And that's where I like to do a lot of like how-to videos and that type of thing.
Yeah, that's incredible. I'm going to definitely hop into your website. I love how-to videos because it's so fun once you do that. And then you can, like you say, make 32 chapsticks and give them away to your friends, or make, cleaning products and give those away to your friends. I used to teach make your own cleaning product. And then maybe you can tell me about this. So borax.
Oh, okay.
Is borax. What do you think about borax?
You know what? I have differing feelings about that. I know some people have some really strong feelings against it.
Yeah.
And I definitely know there are some health concerns, but I mean, as long as we don't use it in a lot of DIY things, I think it's fine.
Okay, so I'm just curious about that because all the kids now, like my kids are a little bit younger. So my youngest is 10 and she makes slime all the time. Like slime is the new craze that your kids might have missed, I think. But
they were there.
Oh, were they? Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It keeps coming back.
Oh my gosh, it's like slime everywhere.
Yes.
But it's also exciting because it is chemistry experiments and it gives me the opportunity to talk to the kids. But borax is still one of those ones where I'm like, especially because they do touch it, and they're playing with it a long time. But I also found it's an amazing cleaning product, like for, for soaking our tea towels, and it gets them really, really clean and fresh. Do you have any tips for tea towels?
For tea towels?
Yeah, how to get them smelling nice and clean and fresh?
Yeah, well, I love this laundry detergent that I've been using because I found out about stripping laundry. I don't know. I do it exactly the right way, but it sounds kind of similar, where I just kind of fill up the washing basin or the sink in the laundry room.
Yeah.
I call it a washing basin.
Back in
the 1800s. What just happened there?
Oh, I don't even know what the thing's called now, like laundry tub?
Yeah, sink. I don't know.
Yeah, it's sink.
So I fill that up.
The laundry sink. Oh, that's awesome.
Oh gosh. So I fill that up with hot water.
You grab your washboard and then
exactly. I just scrub. Oh my gosh, it's too funny. So I throw some laundry. They've got some super powder and it's laundry enzymes. So if you just let it sit in there for a few hours, I do the same thing with my white towels too. It takes, I don't know what it does, takes all the residue off and the water comes out really murky, but then you just throw them in the wash and they come out so soft and smelling so good.
Okay, good. So that's, I do that with borax. And so I'll often soak the stuff that is just like, it just never seems to get clean. And that's exactly what happens. Like I took my, the pillow protectors that you have on your pillow.
Oh,
yeah. So I don't know why I haven't washed, well, my husband hasn't taken his off. I think I have always stripped the beds and take those off, but he didn't. And I was like, what is the color of that pillow protector? That's interesting. And so I did exactly that. I put it in the water and I use borax, but I'm really curious to see, what was the product that you said that you use? What's it called?
Oh, do you want the brand name?
Yeah.
Oh, Molly Suds. And I've done some reels on that on Instagram because I have gotten purple hair dye out of my daughter's clothes, which can never come out. And I got grease out of my husband's shirt, which
never comes out.
Yeah,
oh, that's amazing.
Got it out. Yeah,
okay.
So now, my daughter calls me from friends' houses saying, how do you get salsa out of a shirt? How do you do this? How do you do that? I'm like, who would have thought I was like domestic and knowing how to clean? But it's such a good cleaning product and it's completely non-toxic, but they use some great enzymes and it really just takes everything out.
Amazing. And that's exactly what happened is I cleaned my husband's, I soaked it with the borax. I'm going to check and see the ingredients of the Molly Suds to see if there's similarities. And the water turned the craziest murky color. And I was like so disgusted, but also so excited. And then
Yes,
of course,
same thing.
yeah, exactly. It's like the most exciting thing. And then of course,
It
just
is.
threw it in the wash. And it, just like you said, it's like so soft. It smells so good. And it's so clean and white again. So yeah, it really makes a difference. I'm glad we brought that up because I think that's a hard one that we struggle with. It's like how to get stains out of stuff.
It really is. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's really good. Stripping the laundry. I'd never heard that term. Okay. That's awesome. Okay. So we know where to find you. We're going to put the links below. Everybody can sign up. Please, everyone, just follow what this beautiful woman is doing, Tonya Harris, because she's going to help you eliminate all those toxins out of your work and life environment so that you can live a healthier and brighter life. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
Yeah. And as promised, Tonya delivers. Her knowledge is extensive. She knows the steps that you can take today to start cleaning up your life. So don't wait a second longer. Choose one tiny task that you're going to do today and just start implementing one tiny task a day or a week. And at the end of this year, you'll have implemented what, if you did it weekly, 52 different things that you're currently not doing now. So go back, listen to this podcast again and again, get Tonya's book and start to implement everything that she is saying in baby steps. One thing a day, one thing a week, one thing a month, and you'll be way further ahead than you are now in cleaning up your life. Now, what are the things that we are doing at the Green Mustache? Super excited to announce that we are launching our Green Mustache certified chef training program. So this is for restaurant owners and their entire culinary team to teach them how they can turn the foods that they are already making into foods that heal instead of foods that harm. And so what does that mean? That means eliminating the refined ingredients, the processed ingredients, and really truly eliminating everything that they were taught in chef school to use to make food delicious. Now we're all about making food nutritious and delicious and helping other chefs understand how they can do that the same way we've been doing it for the last 8 years at our restaurants, the Green Mustache, which are located in British Columbia, Canada, but also know that we have 10 locations coming to New York soon. Once we can get over these borders, once COVID is behind us, you'll see the first location open up, one of 10 locations in New York. Another thing that we are launching in any moment now is our Grounded in Our Roots short documentary. So head on over to our website. The link is below at greenmustache.com, 22 million strong, just to learn more about our mission to help 22 million people across North America learn how to use food as medicine to reverse their chronic degenerative diseases. And we're kicking it off with an amazing short doc created by Inlight Films, and that covers my run and bike ride across Canada. And we just completed the bike tour across BC, which was exceptional. We learned a lot. It was tough. It was hard. You're going to learn how I went from being sedentary, workaholic, mama in an office chair to learning how to ride a bike on the road, how to run long distance, and how to get my butt across British Columbia, which for any of you who don't know where that is, it's in the Western Hemisphere of Canada, just north of Washington State in the US, and it's a huge distance. So you'll learn about how I did that and everything that 22 million strong is about, which is about working with BIPOC communities. So that's communities of Indigenous members and people of color, because they are the ones that have been completely disenfranchised from their land, disconnected from their land. They have been forced to live on some of the worst lands that don't grow a stitch of food, and often they live in food deserts, which means that they cannot access clean, real food that many of you and I, if you're listening to this podcast, can access on a daily basis. Often they get their food out of gas stations. If they can get fresh food, it's extremely expensive, like up to $10 for a banana. Can you imagine paying $10 for a banana? And so they're forced to eat refined food, processed food, highly, highly processed food that only contributes to more disease like diabetes and heart disease. So head on over to our website to get on the wait list for when that documentary goes live and to learn more about what you can do in 2022 to help people get access to clean, real food, or just to help yourself learn about how to use food as medicine. So thanks for being with us on the Eat Real to Heal podcast. Stay tuned as we are going to be releasing a new podcast every week for you. And it'll be a mix of long form podcasts like the one I did with Tonya Harris and short form podcasts where I give you little nuggets of juicy information that you can take and start implementing today. So just start small, implement, and before you know it, the year will be out and you will see the healthier, more vibrant, energetic version of yourself that is free of pain, free of your disease, and so that you can go out there and pour your gifts into the world. Thanks for being with me today, and see you again next week.